at number 63 in the net rankings, gradually climbing up after a 3-1 start to conference play. Its opponent today, Boston College, was positioned over 100 spots below at number 182, the lowest ranking of any ACC squad. But the Orange fell short, 81-73 in overtime, in a game they simply couldn't afford to lose. So all of the reaction to what transpired in Chestnut Hill comes your way next on Orange Press Pass. Welcome into our CitrusTV studio for Orange Press Pass after Syracuse men's hoops falls in OT to Boston College. Alongside John Boccio and Griffin Marcy, I'm Sam Reis, and guys, we're getting straight to the chase because this simply couldn't happen for Syracuse, but it's a loss to a bad BC team that earned its first ACC win. Your first thoughts after this one, John?
Yeah, absolutely. My first thought on this one is just the fact that, one, that just really simply cannot happen. And that's the simplest way I can do it. And it's really because Syracuse played down to its competition, which is what it's done all season long. You cannot play down to the other team. And when you play up, you play pretty well. But tonight, it played down to its demise, and Syracuse came out with a horrible loss that could never be put on the schedule if you wanted to make March Madness. And, well, now you just got to live with it. So Syracuse, my first thought, played down to its demise.
There's no other choice they have but to live with it, and that's going to be a very big problem because this loss, to me, comes down to inexcusable, just can't happen, and it's unexplainable. You came in this red hot. BC was one of the worst teams in the ACC. You had won 3 games in a row, and then you just come out there flat-footed. In the past 3 games, you've had spurts where you've played your best basketball, at least in certain points in time. Today, that didn't happen for any extended period, and it showed up at the end of the game when you couldn't magically pull your way out.
Well, Griffin mentioned it right there. 3 straight wins coming into the day, and playing on the road in particular was actually something Syracuse was doing well at. Back-to-back true road wins by double figures for the first time since 2020 after those victories against both Georgia Tech and Pitt. And it was a de facto home game at Boston College with a lot of orange in the crowd. Let's go to Chestnut Hill to show you how it all played out this afternoon. These two teams, ACC rivals, and they played a triple overtime game last year. It's usually a tight battle no matter where both teams stand, and Syracuse did set the tone early. There's a corner 3 from Nathan George, but turnovers. We'll talk about it all show long. A story for Syracuse. Aiden Shaw, the dunk in transition to put the Eagles in front. BC trailing here, though, late in the first half. There's a nice steal by J.J. Starling, who jams it home. Again, Syracuse was making its shots. Donnie Freeman kicking it out. How about a corner 3? That one falls. Nate George from the corner. 31-28, and Donnie Freeman takes it to the rack himself. It was a strong finish to the half in that sense for Syracuse, up by 5 at the break. But in the second half, that's when the turnovers really started to pick up for this Orange squad. Just carelessness on the offensive end of the floor, and BC eventually capitalized. There's a 3 knocked down by Fred Payne, who finished with a career high in points. How about a dunk from Jaden Hastings? Tie game at 55 at that stage. Syracuse up 3, though. That lead cut to 2. Donald Hand with the clutch shot. We go inside the final minute of the game, and this was a big moment because Nate Kings, it was a late whistle, but he actually stepped out of bounds. Look at this, the right foot. It's a good call by the officiating crew. Syracuse still in the driver's seat, but Donnie Freeman misses his first shot on a 1-and-1. It's off of Syracuse. So BC, one last opportunity to tie, and they do just that. Donald Hand from downtown. Syracuse has one last chance. No, guess what? They give it away. BC with a prayer it doesn't fall. Bonus basketball inside Conti Forum. The BC fans that were in attendance fired up, and reasonably so, because the Eagles really controlled the extra period. You just saw an Aiden Shaw dunk. How about Hastings again dunking on William Kyle? It just didn't go for Syracuse, really, any of their shots in the extra 5 minutes, and BC ends up winning comfortably 81-73 in overtime to earn its first ACC win of the season. So definitely a game in which Syracuse had a lead for a large majority, but just can't get it done. And that overtime in particular was a frustrating aspect for Syracuse, who just couldn't get it to drop. BC gets the win, and we will now go just over 300 miles out east from here in Syracuse at Conti Forum, where our reporter Kieran Costa is joining us right now. Kieran, great to be with you first and foremost. I'm just curious, after a result like that, a game you lose that you shouldn't, what was the mood afterwards from both head coach Adrian Autry and the rest of his players?
Well, Sam, it's just about what you'd expect after a game against a BC team that was winless in ACC play. And if I had one word, it would just be dejection. Nobody was happy with the result. But the one thing I will give them credit for, especially the players and Autry in the press conference, was that there was no excuses. There was accountability and candor from everybody. Adrian Autry said, well, this is a game we need to win, and he wasn't afraid to go at some of his players. He said the defensive intensity, it has to be better. The defensive mindset, it has to be better, especially down the stretch. And Donnie Freeman had nothing but things to say about him and his teammates, about how he has to be better. He has to lead the team. And then finally, Nate Kings, he had the best game of his Syracuse career, arguably his college career, and all he could do was say, I have to be better. We have to get the team win.
Tough one all around, Kieran, and you saw it from start to finish, which kind of just leaves me wondering. Syracuse, a pretty comfortable lead at halftime. Yes, single digits, but nothing crazy. What did you see that changed from minute 20 to the end of overtime?
I mean, John, my honest answer for you is not that much. I didn't think they looked very good in the first half either. And you're right, they held Boston College at an arm's length, 5-6 points the entire half, but they had opportunity after opportunity. It should have been a 15-point game at the break. And then when you get down the stretch, the starters were really tired because the Syracuse second unit scored 2 points the entire game. When your starting five is playing the entire game and has to be the entire offensive output, you're going to get run down by the end of the day. And I think that's just about what happened. And those last 5 minutes were just killer.
Kieran, there were so many problems out there today, but usually where the highlights typically come from is Nate George and Donnie Freeman. But today they combined for 14 turnovers. What did you see that BC did to stimulate those turnovers?
Great minds think alike, Griffin. I had the exact same question, and I asked Donnie Freeman after the game, and he said nothing. He said nothing they did made me uncomfortable. Every shot I took, I liked. The jump hook I missed, that's a shot I've been making since I was 8 years old. There was nothing but accountability from every single player in that Syracuse locker room, but Donnie Freeman took a brunt of that and said, I think I prepared well. I think I was ready for this game. I don't think BC was overwhelming defensively. I just have to play better.
That's Kieran Costa, our reporter on the scene at Boston College. Thanks so much for taking the time, Kieran, and enjoy the rest of your time in my neck of the woods and safe travels back to Syracuse, all right? Thank you so much to Kieran for taking the time. We're up against a break here on Orange Press Pass, but we're just getting the fun started here, reacting to SU's loss to Boston College. So stick around, because after this, we'll break down more of what we witnessed at Boston College and take a trip around the nation too. Stick around. Welcome back to Orange Press Pass with John Boccio and Griffin Marcy. I'm Sam Reis. After an overtime loss for Syracuse against Boston College, we'll dive much more into what you guys think after that disappointing defeat for the Orange, but it's also a busy day around the nation in terms of the college basketball slate. What results stand out for you? And we still got some games on tap tonight that are intriguing too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one that sticks out to me the most is that Florida-Vanderbilt game. Number 19 marches down to number 10, beats them in their home court, but it wasn't just any beating. 98-94, the final score. That could have been an NBA final by the end of it.
That's a good one. I see Arizona likely to stay undefeated atop the country. One of the games that sticks out to me is later out west when number 5 Purdue heads to USC. Those Big Ten teams, they always seem to struggle on the West Coast road trips. And the USC team, they've had 2 shellackings recently when they came up to the Mitten. So we'll see how they can handle going bounce back at home with a chance to pick up a top 5 quad 1 win.
UConn surviving a scare from Georgetown earlier this afternoon too. That's the number 3 team in the nation. A lot of great hoops around the country, but then when it comes to just the ACC alone, there's a lot of fascinating results, a fair share of close games too.
Absolutely. The one that sticks out the most by far is North Carolina and California. That was a near 20-point game with Cal up, but Tar Heels have clawed it back with a chance to win within 3 now.
And heading over to Raleigh, though, across what would be this home state, is Georgia Tech, a team that's not been solid, picking up a big road win against NC State. Had such a talented roster there with Will Wade's crew, but they have not been able to mesh at all throughout this season. They have no business losing on their home court to Georgia Tech, and it's a game I'm sure they're going to want back come March.
Former Syracuse player Quadir Copeland, 16 points for NC State in that one.
Yep, still not enough, though, for the Wolfpack against, like Griffin said, a struggling Georgia Tech squad that hasn't really produced to the level they would have expected. All right, focusing it back in on the ACC game we're here to talk about, Syracuse and Boston College. An overtime loss for the Orange, first win in conference play for the Eagles, and a big reason why is because carelessness with the ball for Syracuse. 18 turnovers, that's not going to cut it.
No, not at all, Griffin and Sam. I mean, this is just an absolute travesty at the end of the day because you give up 18 turnovers, and we'll talk about what even a former player had to say about that in just a moment. But it's unacceptable. We talked about it in our first thoughts, but you played down to your competition, and the offense just had no resemblance of anything going on offense. I mean, you could not handle the ball. These passes that you're watching right now are stuff that you see in Little League, in high school even. This is not high conference Division I basketball that you're watching on display from the offensive end from Syracuse. It was just so poor. Nate George, just 6 points and 7 turnovers on the night. Donnie Freeman added another 7 onto that tally.
That to me is what sticks out the most, and is the worst problem is the fact that it's your 2 best players, the shining stars, when you want to limit the turnovers. Typically you want to give the ball to those players, but they were the one causing all the problems today. For your starting point guard to have less points than he does turnovers is completely ridiculous.
It is, and it really hurt Syracuse, especially in that second half. And how about this? Angry alumni, that's a good way to put it, right? This is Judah Mintz, the tweet he put out moments after the game. Former star for Syracuse basketball, Judah Mintz, just a couple of seasons ago, saying, quote, "Bro, our assist to turnover ratio is literally opposite of what it should be." That's quite something coming from a former player who knows that the expectations and the performance has to be better for Syracuse.
Yeah, well, that's a guy who played in Adrian Autry's systems. He knows what the expectations are, and so that is a really telling thing, that he knows what's expected, and he's a guy that had plenty of experience as well, so seeing that is just brutal.
Syracuse falling short of the expectations, and another big reason why that happened today is because the bench was almost non-existent, John. 2 points total from the bench, 1 from Sadiq White, 1 from Kyan Anthony. There has to be more production there.
Oh, without a doubt, Sam. I mean, that, again, I said it earlier, an absolute travesty. If your bench shows up in this game, you probably win. But that's not necessarily an excuse. That's just more of a what happened. Because Kyan Anthony was being used as the main ball handler at certain points, and his shot creation may be great, but his shot making just has not been good in recent games. Plus, Tyler Betsy, a guy that lit it up against Florida State, had 6 3-pointers in that game, just couldn't get anything going, not even just from beyond the arc, but on the inside as well. You need those bench guys to show up for this team to have some form of competence throughout conference play, and that was just the opposite of what happened tonight.
Well, Tyler Betsy being shut down is what's interesting to me because he lit it up against Florida State, and that was a game that he provides points off the catch and shoot three, and that wasn't there today because the offense was completely stagnant and dysfunctional. So he wasn't going to do anything, but I think when your bench struggles so much, that just puts so much strain on your starters who today, likely just had an off day. But if the guys off the bench are not going to give you any sort of juice, it's just going to be a complete recipe for disaster. 2 points from your bench when you play 4 different guys is abysmal.
And especially eye-opening after you see it right there, 29 points from the bench just a few days ago against Florida State. So a lot changed on a game-to-game basis there, where as much as the offense struggled, on the defensive end of the floor too, you could argue there's some frustrations there. I get it's an overtime game, but BC drops 81 points. That's a squad that was averaging fewer than 70, the least in the ACC. Is that an area of concern for you as well, John?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, it has to be an area of concern at the end of the day, because if that's not going to be something that produces, then where are you going to get your production from? If your offense won't show out, your defense needs to step up in big games. And that's why, the defense tonight, unacceptable, because you gave up over 80 points to Boston College, the worst offense in the ACC heading into today. You saw how poorly Syracuse defended, especially when it turned the ball over. There were plays where Syracuse would just give up on defense. Specifically, you saw towards the end of the game in that pick and roll that Syracuse gives up the ball, and then on the other end just has no care in the world to pick up a defender right under the basket. It allows for an easy jam. It was plays like that that showed all night long where Syracuse was really not making its money.
When you look at the numbers here, I think they almost are a little bit misleading. I think Syracuse fans had their expectations set too high for the defensive effort this group could bring from the non-conference and beating up on bad non-conference teams, because the second this team has gone up against Power 5 foes, the defense has completely collapsed. The pick and roll defense today was completely unacceptable. This, again, the worst offense in the ACC, and you got 80 points on your dome. That is just completely an effort-based thing, and it's not been something that's a brand new thing. It's something Coach Austria has complained about since the start of ACC play.
So clearly understandable frustrations from both John and Griffin after this one. And that transitions us into our player of the game. And of course, with Boston College getting the win, I got to give it to Fred Payne. He was clutch when BC needed him to. 26 points, that's a career high for him, and this is someone who's been really elevating his game, especially since conference play has started for Boston College. He previously set his career high 24 just the other week, so he continues to play better. And yes, absolutely, a lot of shots for him to put up, 20 of them, but he knocked enough of them down. He hit some important free throws, 18 of his points coming in both the second half and overtime combined. So this is a guy that, especially in overtime, with 5 crucial points, delivered when this Eagles team needed him to, and especially promising for a BC team that finally, at long last, got its first ACC win. Again, Fred Payne, you are the Orange Press Pass player of the game. Time for another break here on OPP, but afterwards, we're going to have some fun here at the Wall. Break down this overtime loss for Syracuse even more, so stick around. More coverage coming your way next.
Welcome to my house. Lately, not my happy place. Everybody's pretty tired of each other. The parents were not themselves. My little brothers were morphing into small creatures. The walls were closing in. Clearly, a case of too much family, too close, 24/7. And there's a lot of that going around right now. If this sounds like your house, try going someplace new. YourLifeYourVoice.org. You'll find lots of ideas to help you handle the family stresses of being confined to close quarters. YourLifeYourVoice.org. It might not get you out of the house, but it could help you find a little more breathing room.
We're back on Orange Press Pass after Syracuse men's basketball falls to BC in overtime with John Boccio and Griffin Marcy. I'm Sam Reis. The fellas have joined me here at the wall, and we're playing a fun game of Take Your Pick. All right, so there you have it. Here's the gist of Take Your Pick, guys. I'm going to throw out a topic, kind of a talking point regarding this team, and you're going to simply take your pick, what your opinion on it is. So we start off with who really is the primary ball handler on this team. We'll go to you first, John.
I think this answer's a pretty easy one, and in my opinion, we didn't see much of him today, but it absolutely should be J.J. Starling. He has been phenomenal when he has the ball in his hands, and when he is attacking downhill, I don't know if there's anyone on this team that's better than Starling has been this season. Put the ball in his hands a little more often. He only had one turnover today. That's better than any of the other point guards on this team, isn't it?
Well, John, Starling has really stepped it up as late. You really have to go with your guy that's been leading you all season, and it's Nate George. Now, that has not been any good so far today when he had a really bad day with 7 turnovers, but this is the guy that's had a really strong season for the most part this year. You can't just abandon him after one game, and Starling is so much better off the ball. While Nate George maybe shouldn't be the best option, I don't think it's best to bring Starling onto the ball.
Okay, I like your honesty there, Griffin, where it's not just Nate George, it's regrettably Nate George. It's got to be that, right? All right, next question for you guys. Season hopes at this point. I mean, this is a loss that really couldn't happen. Is there any reason this fan base should have any sort of optimism? Where do things stand? I'll go to you first this time, Griffin.
Now, Sam, there's no reason this fan base should have any optimism, but at this point in time, you need to just accept what things are. This isn't going to be a team that wins the ACC. Likely, this team will not play in the NCAA tournament. You may play one ACC tournament game. So at this point, just go out and enjoy the talent that this team has on it. While it doesn't all mesh together well, who knows what people think about the coaching staff, you need to just accept what things are at this point in time and just enjoy it.
Griffin, while I don't disagree with you by any means in the fact that I think all hope for this season is probably lost, however, the only thing that you could possibly do is win out. And that's exactly what you have to do if you want to have any chance at anything this season. And I'm not saying that this is realistic by any means. I don't expect this to happen. It definitely won't happen, actually. But you have to say your season hope is, okay, if you win out, maybe you got a chance. If you beat Duke, UNC twice, and everything else that comes along with a really rough ACC schedule, that is the only way that Syracuse makes anything of this season.
Well, that's the frustrating part of it, right, guys, where this was your easy part of the conference schedule to start. You kind of had to win all of these games, including today, before it gets real rough. And we're going to dive more into the upcoming schedule later. But the real tough opponents and those ranked foes really ramp up in both February and March with some really challenging opponents on the road like Louisville, Duke, and UNC. But for Syracuse to somehow win out, we'll take you through what the start of that would look like and take you through that upcoming schedule when OPP returns. These guys are also going to sound off. You won't want to miss it. More Orange Press Pass coming your way next here on CitrusTV.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Final few minutes as we wind down here on Orange Press Pass. I'm Sam Reis, joined by John Boccio and Griffin Marcy, and this was a frustrating overtime loss for this Syracuse team to Boston College, but like we talked about at the end of the last segment, you kind of have to look forward at this point. So let's do just that. Upcoming schedule for Syracuse. Virginia Tech coming to town on Wednesday night for a late one. And you got Miami, NC State, Notre Dame. What do we think in terms of the ideal record for these two teams with the upcoming schedule?
I don't know what the ideal record, the ideal record is who went out.
Sure,
but
sure.
The realistic record, maybe 1-3. I think maybe win one of those Virginia Tech or Notre Dame games, but Miami kept it close with Clemson today. NC State is not a very winnable game, although they lost to Georgia Tech. I think there's weaknesses in all of these teams, but ultimately Syracuse is the weakest of them all right now. They just lost to Boston College, who didn't win an ACC game.
Coming into this stretch, or coming into today, I would have thought the ideal record for me was 3-1. Now I do believe it has to be 4-0, and 3 of these games are at home, so I do think there's a realistic chance that they can win all 4 of those games, but it's also a necessity at this point in time. You have no other choice.
No, you don't. We're at the nitty-gritty part of this ACC schedule as we wind down in January. And after a difficult and disappointing loss at Boston College today, you won't want to miss this right now because it's time for both John and Griffin to sound off.
Someone's probably done this same old song and dance for the last 5 years now. But my sound off is as simple as a tiny little song. Na 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 na, na 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 na, hey hey hey, goodbye NCAA tournament. There's no chance. It's over. The season's done. You don't even have to tune in if you want to anymore. There's no chance that Syracuse can make the NCAA tournament. You just fell to Boston College, the worst team in the ACC, the worst team in the net, in the low 180s of the net. It doesn't get much worse than that. If you lost to Florida State, you're probably out too. You somehow snuck out of that one, but the luck ran out in Chestnut Hill today. There was no way you could stomp into the Conti Forum, get out of there with a loss, and still make this NCAA tournament unless you either win the ACC tournament or you win out in conference play, and neither of those are going to happen. So Syracuse fans, let's pipe down. It's done. On to next season.
I'm going to piggyback off John here, and I'm going to tell you that today likely sealed the fate of Adrian Autry. So you know what you got to focus on next? You need to hire the right person because you're now going to approach 5 straight years of no NCAA tournament. And if you stick with Adrian Autry, that'll be one thing. But if you go into the offseason, hire somebody that does not turn out to be the right guy, you will lose the fan base that is already on the brink. And within this new era where fans can donate to your NIL and so many other evolving things, it seemed like you approached this offseason right, but it's not going to work. So you need to hire a new coach who's going to come in with the right plan, with the right mindset, and the ability to make the right changes with the right backing. Otherwise, you're going to do the same old story over and over again.
Right. It's edging on 5 years straight missing the NCAA tournament for this team. But before we focus on next season, we have to focus on the rest of this one. And this is a challenging opponent coming into the Dome. Virginia Tech, who's lost all 3 of its ACC losses on final second shots. But it's a good Hokie squad. That'll be a 9 p.m. game from the Dome. If you're a night owl like me, a 1 a.m. Orange Press Pass. Stay up late Thursday morning early. This should be a challenging game for Syracuse.
Absolutely. I mean, forward Neoklis of Dallas for Virginia Tech has been an absolute stud this year. A 19-year-old out of Greece has lit up the stat sheet all season long. He's going to wreak havoc on SU.
I think this is a good spot for Syracuse where you're going to have a Saturday game all the way to Wednesday. You got an extra day to prepare for this game. They'll come in fired up and ready, but who knows if it will really matter at this point. You just better hope you have enough of a crowd there to even have some sort of home backing when you come into this one.
So as we wrap up shop here on OPP, just quick hitters from both of you. Does Syracuse win Wednesday?
No.
Yes.
Okay, we got differing thoughts from both John and Griffin. This has been a fun show of Orange Press Pass despite Syracuse falling in overtime to Boston College. We thank you so much for being a part of it. For our executive producer, Helaina, Stovin, Griffin, Marcy, and John Boccio, I'm Sam Reis. Have a great rest of your weekend.